What's up everyone, thanks for joining. Today we're going to be installing this ZRT, Zero Resistance Throttle, on this 2018 RMZ450. I'm going to show you all the tools you need, what to do to prep the bike, and how to install the ZRT. So thanks for watching. Alright, so first off, what the hell is a Zero Resistance Throttle anyway? Well, I'm glad you asked. The Zero Resistance Throttle is basically a CNC cut throttle tube that replaces your bike's stock throttle. And the beauty about this particular part is that it includes two roller bearings, and what that does is once the throttle is installed on the bike, you'll have a roller bearing here on your bar and another roller bearing on the end of the bar. So basically this tube will never touch the bar itself like a stock unit. It will never drag, and the action is extremely smooth, not to mention more durable. As an added bonus for me at least, the grips on this RMZ are extremely hard. They blister you quite quickly, and I'm ready to try a new set of grips. So that is just one more thing I'm looking forward to doing with this install, and so let's get after it. Alright, so I know what you're thinking, dude, it's a throttle tube, how hard could it be, right? Well, I'm going to show you a few more things that I like to do that will make your life a little bit easier when you're trying to dial your settings back in once you're all done. So that starts with the Sharpie. Alright, so every time I need to unbolt my bars and move them around or change any of my rider settings, I like to go ahead and take a Sharpie and make a little mark where everything's lined up inside the bar clamp. That way, when I put everything back together, I don't have to hunt for the right spot, I don't have to tweak the bike at the track, I don't have to figure anything else out. I bolt it back on and I go. I don't have to worry about anything else. So, first things first, I'd like to take a Sharpie and somewhere inside the bar clamp, make a mark so that when I put this all back together, I have an easy guideline in order to put everything back right where it was. So that saves me time and lets me get back to having fun a little sooner. I'm going to do the same thing over here where the brake master cylinder bolts to the bars. That way, same as before, everything goes back on right the way it was, and I don't have to hunt around at the track, come off, adjust something, go back out. Most bikes, when removing the throttle assembly, are going to require you to unbolt the bars and move them to the left because you run out of slack in the cables. So that's the main reason for doing this, and without further ado, let's get these bars unbolted. Okay, so what tools do we need? In our case, and in most bikes' cases, you're going to need an 8mm setup to loosen the master cylinder from the bars. This bike requires a number 2 Phillips to loosen the throttle assembly in order to slide it off the bar. We already know what the Sharpie's for. My bar mounts are going to require a 10mm socket. The older I get, the more impatient I seem to get, and so we are using an impact gun to remove these bar mounts up here. However, when I reinstall the bar mounts, I will be using a regular ratchet and the 10mm. That way I can set proper torque or have a better feel in general. Another tool we're going to be using is this sag scale. The reason I'm using this sag scale is because it has measurements in millimeter. Now you can use something else that does the same thing, but more or less you're going to need this shortly, and I'm going to show you why. That also goes hand in hand with this bandsaw. Yes, this bandsaw. So we'll get to that shortly, but for now let's pull the bars off the bike. Before I remove the bolts from the bar clamp themselves, I'm going to loosen up the throttle tube and the brake master cylinder. It will just make it easier than having to do that once the bars start to rotate and flop around. So taking your 8mm, in most cases, go ahead, loosen this bad boy up. In order to access the Phillips screws that hold the throttle assembly together, you will need to peel back the rubber boot, just 2 Phillips screws. And just like that, everything is moving. And as you can see, I cannot get this off the bar all the way without moving the bars over themselves. In my case, I had just one extra obstacle. I know most guys are not going to have their hour meter mounted right here, though it is a great place if you can't find one. This RMZ doesn't really have a great location in front of the tank, and so this had to do here. So I'm going to go ahead and take this hour meter off as well and keep on going. Hour meter is out of the way, brake master cylinder set aside. Alright, for all you old men, work smarter, not harder. Alright, the bars are fully disconnected, everything is loose. I'm now able to slide this throttle tube off the side here, like so. She's free. Alright, it is worth mentioning that you can actually fully disassemble this and take it apart all the way, but in my case, and in the case of using this bandsaw, I like to keep everything together till the end, have a few less things flopping around, And with that being said, we're going to go ahead and take the bars and put the bars back in the clamps. That way we have a solid cutting surface when we get that bandsaw out. All right, now at this point, this is when you get to start playing with the saw. You can use a bandsaw, you can use a hacksaw, you can use your teeth if they're sharp. I don't care what you use, but you will need to modify your bars slightly. And the reason that is because when you install this insert on the end of the bar, this bearing takes up 15 millimeters of space here on the end. If you don't modify your bars when you put this insert in, you'll end up with a longer bar on one side. Some guys won't care, some guys won't notice. I want to do it right. If you're running bark busters, it's 17.5 millimeters, and that's also where the sag scale comes in handy because it measures in millimeters. So let's go ahead and saw these bars off. So take whatever measuring device you've got that measures in millimeters, go ahead and set the 0 on the end of the bar. And since these bars are black and a Sharpie is a little bit too fat, I'm actually just going to use something to scrape the bar at 15 millimeter to reveal a little bit of silver and have a nice place to make my cut. So there's 15 millimeters. Time to saw these bad boys. 15 millimeters. It's just that easy. There she is. Now don't worry if you guys don't have laser vision. It's not the end of the world. This can be a little bit off. If you're OCD, good for you. Now this piece I've removed takes up a portion of where the bearing rides and the bolt in the end, and the rest will be consumed by the end of the throttle tube. So again, if you don't have laser vision, not the end of the world. This thing cuts so clean it doesn't even need a deburr, but if you need to deburr your bars because you cut it with a butter knife or something, then go ahead and clean the area up, get any loose or raggedy edges cleaned up, and then you can go ahead and continue. Oh, and before we go any further, I should have mentioned it before, so I've put the throttle assembly back on, but check the tolerance on this bad boy. I don't know if you can hear that clicking, but this is forward and backward, not left to right. That's a whole nother story. Anyhow, we got some play in there, and I wanted to go ahead and catch that too, so we can compare against the final product. All right, back over here in throttle tube land, we're gonna go ahead and continue pulling this guy apart all the way. Go ahead and bust out your Phillips screwdriver. Stash it in the old back pocket for safekeeping. Then you can completely remove the old plastic throttle tube from the aluminum housing. You guys have done this 100 times, so bye now. All right, now we can go ahead and install the insert here with the roller bearing on the end into the bar. It has a couple of rubber O-rings on it, so work it slowly. You don't want to tear these or pull them out of their little channels. When you get to the end, if you can't push this in all the way and everything looks good with the O-ring on the end, the final O-ring, you can go ahead and give this a little tap. In my case, I'm doing exactly what I said not to do, which was get the O-ring to rise out of its channel. So we're going to go ahead and gently keep working her, and there she is. Now the last O-ring has passed the bar end, so a little tap and we're seated. Now you got yourself a slick little roller bearing on the end of that bad boy. We're not even done installing and you can already tell the difference. A stock throttle tube will never do this. Don't think so. Now an important note, this kit comes with 2 nylon washers, and these go on either side of the throttle tube, inside the throttle housing itself. So these are basically like bushings and keep everything working well and sliding well. So you'll take one of these nylon washers and install it on the bar first. It will get collapsed inside of the throttle housing that carries the cables. The other one should be pre-installed on the end of your throttle already. If it's not, it'll be in the box. Go ahead and slide that on after you get your cables in. Next step is to go ahead and get the cables back into the end of the throttle cam here and then put everything back in the housing. So you're going to take your throttle tube, you're going to go ahead and get these cables routed back inside the cam. The large part of the cam that accepts the cables should face down when you put your cables back into it, like so. Now once you get to this point, we're going to go ahead and loosen the bar mounts again, slide the bars over so we can get this whole assembly to go back on. Again, we need to have one nylon washer here, followed by the throttle tube itself, followed by another nylon washer here, and we're going to install the throttle housing around all of it. Got one side here. Again, make sure these nylon washers are between the end of the throttle tube cam and the housing itself. Also make sure you put it on the right side, because I am a big dumb retard. So there's one. Double check that the nylon washer is where it belongs. Got the other one. Same thing with the nylon washer. Once you get this all collapsed, go ahead and get your Phillips screws. Drop them some bitches back in there. Bust out the screwdriver. And the rest is history. All right. She's on there. Ultra smooth. I love it already. I'm gonna go ahead and bolt the bars back down to get them nice and tight, and we can do a slop test like we did on the stock unit. All right, moment of truth. Very, very little, much less than stock, front to back. That's sweet. It's little things like this that make you a more confident rider. You may not think about it, but it's happening, and the less you're worrying about your bike, the faster you're going. All right, so from this point, all that's really left to do is go ahead and put everything back to the way you found it before you started working on your bike. You can use your Sharpie marks to put everything exactly where it was. You won't have to adjust anything later, and you'll be a happy camper. I'm gonna go ahead and do that now, and I'll be back with you guys in just a sec here. All right, so that's it. That's one complete install of one of Tom's ZRT Zero Resistance Throttles. Installing it is a breeze. The hardest part of the whole job is finding something to cut your bars with. If you don't own a bandsaw, you may have to run out and get a hacksaw and take that 15 millimeters off. Anybody using bark busters, no problem. This throttle will accommodate any bark buster you'd like to use. Now I just have to pick out what set of grips I want to run. I got some Mica grips, some Pro Taper pillow tops, and I have these Kevlar type rentals on my trail bike, though these are the tapered series. So if any of you guys are running a ZRT throttle, let me know what you think about it in the comments below. And also I want to know what kind of grips are you running. I've never tried the tapered series rentals. If you have a suggestion for me, I want to hear about it. Huge thanks to all you guys watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Go ahead and smash that like button if you haven't already. Tom, thank you very much for the ZR throttle. I cannot wait to get this thing out on the track. When we tried this throttle in our CR250 build Project Gun Show, I really enjoyed it on the track, and I'm looking forward to putting more hours on it with my own personal bike. Thanks guys, I'll see you next time.